everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Total Soccer Show. It's our weekend review show. I am your host, Taylor Rockwell. With me, I've got a man who, despite being in his 30s, was somehow on the shortlist for PFA Young Player of the Year. It's Ryan Bailey. Hello, Ryan.
Hello, Tay. Thank you for having me once again. You know, some people don't like Mondays, but when I hear you just say that little intro like you do every week, brightens my day, and it brightens my day as a 35-year-old Young Player of the Year award winner, apparently.
I appreciate that on all accounts. I thought you were going to zigzag there, and it makes my day even darker. So I'll take even brighter. So I bring up the PFA awards in the introduction because we now know PFA Player of the Year is Virgil van Dijk, first defender to win it since Sean Terry in 2005. Raheem Sterling, we think, was probably his closest competitor for that one. Instead, Raheem Sterling wins the PFA Young Player of the Year award.
Of course.
And I know Raheem Sterling is 24, which is very young, don't get me wrong. It just feels like if you're going to have a Young Player of the Year award, it should be like an 18-year-old or a 19-year-old. Leroy Sané, I think, won it when he was 22. That's on the margins. Where are you on this one? Is Raheem Sterling still technically a young player for you, Ryan?
I mean, I guess by the PFA rules he is, but I agree with you. It does feel a bit odd. It feels like he has been around a very long time. It was a long time since we saw Brendan Rodgers remonstrate him on that This Is Liverpool documentary. Yeah. That was years ago, wasn't it?
It really was.
And I mean, the potential issue is he's taken that award away from an actual younger player, maybe yes. a Declan Rice, a Marcus Rashford. I mean, he was frozen out for half the season and still did very well. Bernardo Silva, I guess he could be in for it too, couldn't he? So there's a few others who may have taken that award. But how do you feel, Taylor, about VVD getting it over Sterling, the main gong?
I mean, I think, first of all, I think that's probably why Sterling gets the Young Player of the Year award, is because Virgil van Dijk gets the overall Player of the Year. I think it was always going to come down to these two. I enjoyed on Football Weekly a couple weeks ago, every single one of them said, it's going to be Virgil van Dijk, but it should probably be Raheem Sterling. And I think I'm probably somewhere along those lines, that I like, for all of the off-field stuff that Raheem Sterling has been doing and how vocal he's been as a sort of leader on and off the field for Man City and for England. I've enjoyed that, but I think that's not what it comes down to, and that's certainly not what it comes down to when the voting happens in March amongst the players. So I think it was probably likely to be Virgil van Dijk, and I think that makes sense to me, especially because he stands out in so many ways. Not that Raheem Sterling doesn't, but that City team is just so full of great attackers that you can sort of be terrified of everyone. With Liverpool, he has been the kind of ever-present defender this season, and so I think if you're looking at that team who are challenging for the title, who are kind of the underdog challengers, you look at Virgil van Dijk as that player who's sort of leading that team, making it happen from a defensive standpoint. And because they've been kind of leaky at the back in seasons past, for him to come in and kind of lock it down, I think all of that justifies him as Player of the Year.
I completely agree with that. Now, you've changed my mind, because I was going to say that I think Man City will win. I think Man City will win the league. I still maintain that position, and I think that Raheem Sterling should be on the winning team. I think there's something in that. But I agree with you. He does sort of raise the tide higher at Liverpool than arguably Sterling raises the tide at City. But obviously, Sterling hasn't gone away empty-handed. He got the Young Player Award, and more interestingly, perhaps, he got the Football Writers Association Footballer of the Year Award. So that, to me, that says that all the players have voted for Virgil van Dijk, but when the writers have come in and they've considered stuff off the field, they've considered what a role model he's been and how important he's been in the game off the field as well. So I think there's some justification in that too.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think also the writers, I believe, vote on it a little bit later, so maybe they're looking at things the way they're going and thinking, well, Virgil van Dijk deserves something, because he may not end up getting silverware. As you said, it does seem like maybe City holding on to it. We're going to get to that in just a moment. We're going to be talking lots of Premier League, some Championship, some competitions in Europe, not as much Major League Soccer this week. I think TSS is going to be doing sort of a catch-up MLS show later on in the week, so you can look forward to that. But for now, I want to start in the obvious spot, Wimbledon. Ryan, Wimbledon, talk about it.
Thank you for letting me crowbar this into the running order of today's show, Taylor. I do appreciate it. I'm not sure people know out there, my team is AFC Wimbledon. We're in League One. We're a team who started from scratch in 2002, literally holding trials in a local park. We got all the way up to League One, the third tier of the English division. And we've been in the relegation zone, Taylor, for 189 days up to this past weekend. We were 10 points adrift at Christmas. It was just a complete write-off. It was, let's start rebuilding for League Two next season. But this past weekend, beat Wycombe Wanderers 2-1, came out of the relegation zone, now 2 points clear. It's in our hands to stay up in the last game of the season. That's against Bradford, who are already relegated. And It's been a really, really good weekend for me. I've felt lifted more than I've felt lifted in a long time, and I just wanted to sort of emphasize how important this game is. It's about community. It's about family. I mean, my dad was the one who got me into the beautiful game, Taylor, and he's not around anymore. But if he was, he would have absolutely loved what happened this weekend to our club. And I wish I could be talking to him about it. But that's not to bring the tone down a bit too much. I just wanted to say how, we talk about silly incidents and big clashes between these huge European titans. But this just rammed home for me how, this is more than a game. It's about family. It's about community and all the people I know who are connected to that club. I'm a part owner of AFC Wimbledon because it's a fan-owned club as well. And it's just given me a lift like no other soccer story has this year, frankly. And I'm probably very much alone in that out of all the listeners who are on this podcast right now. But I just wanted to get that off my chest.
Oh, no, I appreciate that. I actually have a couple questions for you because, first off, like with AFC Wimbledon, with the history that you've gone through, it makes sense that they're in the position they're in, which is like battling to stay in League One. But I do wonder, do you use this as an example for when you're talking to Americans who are maybe somewhat familiar with soccer in Europe or not as familiar about what Pro Rel is? Do you look at this as sort of the best defense of Pro Rel? Because here you have Wimbledon, who, as you said, in the relegation zone all season. Now they're in 19th in the third division of England, and yet you are ecstatic. And to me, that feels like a very good advertisement for why people should be, not that people aren't in favor of Pro Rel, but just a good advertisement for why it is such a useful thing when it comes to keeping everybody's interest alive throughout the season.
Yeah, I think it is. The pyramid system is the best, Taylor, frankly. I mean, it's kind of the American dream that something can come from nothing and get all the way to the top, isn't it? So that it would suit this country, I feel like, in that respect. Maybe not in an economic respect, the way things are currently set up, of course. I'm not looking to change the world in that respect, but I do think it's a great system that we have. And I have a lot of conversations when people ask me who my club is, and I tell them it's Wimbledon. We used to be in the Premier League. It's where the tennis is, and they're not really sure on them, but actually, interestingly, I had a conversation this week and with someone who I was explaining how we're fan-owned. He was like, like the Green Bay Packers. And I was like, yeah, like the Green Bay Packers. Kind of like that, yeah.
Do you ever have those moments when you're like, I can't tell if the person is trying to trick me, and I'm just like, yes, of course, but really they're just owned by some mega conglomerate? No, Green Bay Packers are one of the few, if not the only one, who I think are still fan-owned.
Yeah.
So
it would be arrogant of me to suggest that anyone would know who Wimbledon was, frankly, but I like sharing our story because lots of people haven't heard it, so I'm spreading the word. I'm spreading the gospel of the Dons out here,
I think
Taylor.
You should be. And my second question then is, say, not, cart before the horse, knocking on wood. If things go well, if you're able to get 3 points against Bradford, they stay up. What is then for a team that were in the relegation zone, held on, stayed in League One? What is the offseason like then? Is there more of an offering to get more people on board, to get more money in? What does the club do to invest, or is it sort of stay where they are and kind of hope to stay where they are?
It's a great question, and we're in a difficult position because if you'd asked me this in December, it would be total rebuild, baby. Everybody out, everybody who's on moderately expensive wages gets out, and we rebuild completely. But obviously, this team, we've only had one defeat in our last 11. It's been completely turned around with a new manager, a guy called Wally Downs, who used to play for Wimbledon back in the day. And I don't know, financially, it's going to be a struggle because we're currently building our own stadium. We're finally returning home back to the Borough of Merton, back to Wimbledon, where we belong. So it's going to be difficult to spend money. We did make some money from cup runs this season, and it really does hammer home how important these cup runs can be for in the FA Cup and in the League Cup for lower level teams. Getting 500 grand to get into the next round or the third round or something might not mean much to Manchester City, but it's half a year's wages for a small club. So these things are really important, and we're glad we got something banked from that. But to answer your question, no idea.
That's fair, but a solid weekend then for you, at least overall, because Wimbledon in the position they're in, that's good. For you, writing about Man City, which I'm going to guess makes you a nominal Man City fan. They're able to keep their position on top of the table. A nervy 1-0 win away at Burnley. I found this game, not necessarily the game itself fascinating, but just watching all of the players, and especially Pep Guardiola, because I think there were City teams of the past who were maybe struggling to compete for a second straight title, you tend to see them take their foot off the gas, and there's just a little bit, like at times, complacency, and you don't see them quite as like up for every single moment. And in this one, every single missed opportunity, especially in the first half, it was just so many pained expressions and so much anxiety, no relaxation at all. And I genuinely can't tell if that's a good thing. Is that they're taking it so seriously and like everybody really, really desperately wants to win, or is that everyone is so anxious that unless things like don't go their way and they don't get a goal line decision, things are like incredibly nervy and about to break down?
I think I've looked at it in two ways, because one way, obviously this team has won 12 league games in a row. They're doing pretty well. You know, it looks like they've got the confidence to go the distance here. But on the other side, this is another game where they didn't look convincing for several spells. Kind of the first hint of this we saw was the Brighton FA Cup game a few weeks back, wasn't it? Where there was like, oh, they're still City, but they're not convincing 100% of the time. But then you have to think back to those Sir Alex Ferguson teams and the way they grind out results, and that old cliche of, you know, you win titles by winning when you don't play at your best. And I think that's what City are doing right now. And I'm not worried about them from this performance, because this is one that people sort of outlined as being a potential banana skin, as Jurgen Klopp likes to call them. So I think they did well. I mean, you look at Burnley, they had 2 shots in this game. City had 25. And you can argue that that's, some problems with converting, and there was a few chances cleared off the line, not least the one that actually went over the line by 29.51 millimetres. That's about an inch. And what I think that could be a great narrative, because if City do win the league by an inch, then it could literally have been millimetres that decide this title race. And that's pretty cool, isn't it?
It definitely is. It definitely is. I also think it was very cool that, given what I was talking about with like how nervy things looked, how anxious Pep Guardiola looked, I think you still see how strong of a manager he is. I know I'm not breaking new ground by saying that one, but match of the day, Alan Shearer did a great analysis pointing out of like the touches Raheem Sterling had and how they were all kind of confined to the right side in the first half, limited in their attacking scope, and it didn't feel like City were getting prime chances. And basically at halftime, Pep switches City to a 4-4-2. They match Burnley's shape. They put Sterling and Aguero together. And then they suddenly start to get like way more opportunities, so many more chances. They end up getting the goal. And so it's a testament to Pep Guardiola that he's able to, while still like looking like he's about to pull out hair that he doesn't even have on top of his head, he still is able to kind of then go in and make intelligent changes at halftime to find a way to win.
Yeah, he definitely did. And I mean, we ended this game with 4 centre-backs on the field for Man City. When was the last time you saw them do that? I don't think, I'm not sure they ever have. Exactly, yeah. So that was interesting, but you could see Guardiola screaming to like sort of, burn some minutes at the end. Get it in the corner, waste some time. So I think there was definitely some proverbial hair pulled out of his non-hairy head, as you say. But got over the line, and that's what matters, isn't it? And, I mean, we look at it's Leicester and Brighton coming up, those final 2 games, and you could say that Leicester, who are looking very good, obviously had a good result at the weekend too, and they know, Jamie Vardy knows a thing or two about beating a high line and beating a team who presses. Yeah. So there's some danger there, and also they lost to Leicester, didn't they, earlier in the season? So that's maybe the remaining banana skin. And obviously Brighton is, gave them a run for their money at Wembley too. So there's 2 difficult games, but I still have full confidence they're going to get full points from these last 2.
I was going to say, I feel like you barely believe what you're saying right now when you talk about the threats that are being posed by Leicester and Brighton. But I appreciate that you're trying not to look past opponents. I also really enjoyed no Avengers spoilers. I have not yet seen Endgame. Daryl and I are going to see it tomorrow, as we sometimes do. But I know, it's adorable. But I want to use an Avengers analogy because I believe I'm correct in saying that at least in the movie, Black Panther's suit like absorbs energy, and that's what gives him like extra strength. And I do like the idea that Pep Guardiola has to do something with all of his nervous energy that he builds up over the game. And so if you watch him at the end in the celebrations, he is so ridiculously physical. Like, I feel like he just builds up all this energy and has to do something with it. So at the very end, as they're walking off, he chases down Kyle Walker, puts him in a bear hug, talks to him from like an inch away from his face, hugs him some more, shoves him away, turns around, slaps Bernardo Silva on the back of the head. Bernardo Silva turns around, he bear hugs him. It just feels like he has to find some way to like alleviate all of his energy. And so he just does it at the end by kind of manhandling his players.
Definitely. I mean, I wonder if Pep Guardiola has to have sort of a rub down from the physio after games, because his Achilles must be tight, his glutes must be, the way he's bouncing on his haunches and jumping around all game. It must be tough on him. He's no spring chicken anymore. Can I just? I'll just finish up on Man City by this little nugget I found on Reddit this morning. In the 2006-07 season, City broke an all-time Premier League record that still stands today by scoring only 10 goals at home. Their top goal scorer in all competitions that year. Can you have a guess who it was? 06-07?
It was Joey Barton, right?
Joey Barton with 7 goals.
I would not have been able to guess that. I think I saw that stat just before we started recording.
I was going to say that's a very impressive guess if you didn't see that. But look how far they've come is my point.
I wish I had that Jonathan Wilson brain in a fish tank, but I do not quite have that memorizing ability. So City, top of the table, 1 point over Liverpool, who just continued to destroy Huddersfield as teams have done this season. A 5-0 win for Liverpool. Kind of what was expected. I listened to a Paddy Power person breaking this one down, and I think all the betting odds were that Liverpool would destroy Huddersfield. That's exactly what happened. So the top two remained as they have, 5 straight wins for both, and then it's the rest. Tottenham lose to West Ham. I don't honestly have much to say about that one because I would prefer to talk about United v Chelsea. Again, Arsenal getting destroyed by Leicester 3-0. Chelsea, Man United dropping points. It seems like no one wants the final Champions League spot. And I personally was pretty disappointed in this one, which probably isn't a big surprise given that I'm a Man United fan. They take the early lead, then they give up the equalizer. More specifically, David De Gea gives up the equalizer. The Stretford end, I think, cheer him when he comes on at halftime, but that has not stopped the pundits, right, justifiably so, from kind of pointing out it's another howler for him. It's a very bad run of form, and that has led to a lot of speculation of what does Ole Gunnar Solskjaer do with these remaining 2 games, given how bad David De Gea has looked or how rough he's looked in some performances here and there. What do you think, Ryan? Where are you on this one? Are you in favor of you drop a player who's kind of out of sorts and maybe just give them a break, or is it too late in the season for that, or do you not think that he needs a break at all?
I'm finding it difficult to answer this question, which is why I'm not paid the big bucks by Manchester United to make this kind of call. Because obviously, David De Gea is in poor form. If you had a player in poor form outfield, you would pull him out in most cases. But of course, you risk if what little confidence he has right now being absolutely shattered beyond belief if you pull him out. But I think. What would Sir Alex Ferguson do? I think he'd pull him out, wouldn't he?
I think he probably would. I think
he probably would, because I think when you look at it at the end of the day, you've got Sergio Romero on the bench. He's very good. And when is he? I don't remember him making too many errors leading to goals, and I think he's a very worthy substitute. Maybe, is there a better substitute goalkeeper in the Premier League than Romero? I'm trying to think.
It's a great question, and it's one I've heard multiple people bring up. I genuinely haven't been able to find another one who I would rather have, but I think because David De Gea has been so good for so long, it still feels like this massive drop off. Whereas, Sergio Romero remains the starting goalkeeper for Argentina. That's a big deal to have one of the best national teams of the world's goalkeeper as your backup. That does seem like a serviceable replacement. I would also point out, I think, again, I want to give credit where credit is due. I think it was on Football Weekly. They pointed out that Ferguson did, in fact, bench Peter Schmeichel I think he sent him on holiday for a couple games after he had a rough season in the year that they won the treble. So I think you do have that standard to go off of if you're Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who was in that team, obviously. But then the question is, with 2 games remaining, does that feel a little bit we appreciate what you've done, but and you've done all this for us in the past, and you've been this kind of wall that held the team together for 2 or 3 seasons. But now that you're kind of having a bad run of form, we're going to get rid of you. And also at a time when they're trying to keep him around, even if he wants more money than anyone in the world except for Alexis Sanchez. I think it really, really is a tricky situation. So I won't be surprised if he ends up staying in goal for these final 2 games.
Yeah, then you have the economic consideration here, which you've just brought up. If they do take him out, it might lower his value if they do try and sell him this summer.
Yeah, I think no matter what, was that tongue in cheek or was that serious?
I'm serious. I'm serious because if you stick with him, you're maintaining him as your number one. I think you get more value for him, particularly if he picks up in form in these past 2 games. If you can sign him to the sidelines right now, you're basically knocking some cash off of the potential price you get for him if you're in the market to replace him.
Yeah, and I think that's where honestly it will be really fascinating to me to see what Solskjaer does. And I mean that more so from a like player management standpoint, that if he has this contract, he expects to be there long term. He expects that. We'll see what ends up happening. But it does feel like then the solution is you keep De Gea in there, but it requires a sit-down conversation about what are your expectations? What do you want at the end of the season? Do you want to leave? Yeah. If you want to leave, then that's fine. But, then we need to evaluate our long-term future and do we want a player who's not performing, who doesn't want to be here? Or if De Gea says, no, I want to focus on this season and I want to focus on the season beyond, then maybe if you're Solskjaer, you kind of give him the benefit of the doubt and stick with him. So I think we'll see what the decision is and how De Gea's form either improves or does not in these final 2 games will, I think, give a somewhat of a decent indicator as to how Solskjaer approaches individual man management and talent management at that.
Yeah. That will be interesting to see. And, of course, if Man United haven't fixed their fax machine yet, then he can't leave anyway.
Well, there's that too. Oh, I hope they have. I hope they have. But it does mean, it seems right now, given how disastrous Arsenal looked against Leicester, United failing to get the win at home against a Chelsea side that didn't seem to have too many ideas aside from shoot when David De Gea isn't expecting it and hope for the best, and that worked out. Yeah. It does feel like Spurs will hold on to 3rd place. It does feel like Chelsea, surprisingly, will end up holding on to 4th place, which means no Champions League for Manchester United or Arsenal next season, but probably some good times in the Europa League, so they can look forward to that. But speaking of the Champions League returns this week, which brings us to today's sponsor, BR Live. BR Live Soccer Pass is the only way to see all UEFA Champions League and Europa League games, plus the UEFA Youth League and the Scottish Premier League. And you can get...
Don't forget the Scottish Premier League.
Don't ever forget it. Don't sleep on it. Otherwise, Timothy Weah will get mad at you. Individual game passes allow you to pick and choose which matches you want to watch. Given that there are only 2 semifinals plus the final, so 5 games remaining, you might want to go with the individual match passes because if maybe one of these games is a blowout or both are blowouts, then you don't have to kind of worry about having spent all the money for the second 2. We should get into what the actual schedule is for this week. Ryan, do you happen to have the schedule in front of you?
Well, I certainly do. I may even know it off the top of my head, Tay-Tay. That's how clever I am these days. Of course, on Tuesday, we've got Tottenham taking on Ajax at the world's greatest stadium. No one can ever dispute it ever again. That one is going to be on TNT and BR Live. And on Wednesday, Barcelona are going to beat Liverpool, and that one is at 3 p.m, of course, Eastern as well on TNT and BR Live.
So did you just give us your predictions there as well?
Oh, maybe for the second one, I think I inadvertently did, yes. I can't call Spurs Ajax, though. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Because obviously they were pretty feckless against West Ham at the weekend, but you could have called that. They'd rest a bunch of players. Yeah. They'd have a bit of low energy before going into this one. Ajax coming into this one with the Eredivisie cancelling all games for all teams, so they're a bit fresher.
Yeah, I mean that tells you something right there, that they're definitely placing the emphasis on supporting Ajax at all costs. I think it's also, I saw a lot of think pieces about like West Ham showed Ajax the way to beat Tottenham. It's like by playing a lot of their reserves. Is that what it is? Like by making sure that Spurs don't play all their starters? Cool. That's good to know. I mean, Son's still in there. Dele Alli's still in there. Christian Eriksen's still in there. But yes, to your point, many others rested. And it definitely looked like Tottenham were kind of looking at this as, we're probably going to qualify for the Champions League. Let's focus on, since we did get, theoretically, the weaker of the possible opponents remaining in the competition, let's really focus on getting past them, getting to that final, and that would be like the big one for them. So I think it's still very much like wildly open, even if some people think like, oh, Spurs are struggling, Ajax had the week off, it'll be, that maybe gives the advantage to Ajax. I think it's going to be pretty wide open and pretty exciting. That's my hope for that one.
Either way in that one, Tete, I can't wait to see Vincent Janssen and Fernando Llorente up front again. What a world we live in. It's 2019, guys.
And I think both of these games are going to be fascinating because I kind of don't know what to expect from Spurs Ajax and also kind of have ideas. And then for Barcelona Liverpool, I think it's just going to be crazy entertaining soccer. And I know sometimes when we think games are going to be incredibly exciting, they end up being very dull. I just kind of, not to jinx it, don't understand how that could be a possibility in this game.
I don't know. I think flip a coin on this one for me, Tata. I feel like Barcelona will win it and I'll win the tie overall. And the logic dictates that they'll win at the Camp Nou. So, but it just feels like there's going to be plenty of goals in this one, doesn't it?
It certainly does. It certainly does. And if you want to see those goals happen, but say you're at work, on the road, driving, obviously watch your phone while you're driving. Definitely do that. That's not a bad idea at all. But if you want to go with these single game passes to BR Live, you can do so, and you can do so at a discount. You can get 50% off an individual game by using the code SoccerShowSF19. That's all one word. Obviously, that's the kind of abbreviated form of Soccer Show Semifinal 19. So Soccer Show SF19 to get 50% off an individual game or individual game passes. We will put a link to that promo code in the show notes. But thank you very much to BR Live for sponsoring today's episode. We're very excited for the Champions League. We're also excited, I think, to talk about the championship, where there was a whole mess of drama this weekend, Ryan Bailey.
There certainly was. In particular, the final 15 or 20 minutes of Aston Villa taking on Leeds United, both of whom in the Championship playoff places, with Leeds, if they won, still in contention to get automatic promotion. They did not get that after all in the end because of a very insane series of events that went down.
Yes.
So we had in the 72nd minute of this one, Mateusz Klich getting a very controversial goal. Basically, a Villa player goes down under a challenge. Yeah, under a Liam Cooper challenge. Kodja's lying on the floor, and it looks like Villa have kind of stopped. They're like expecting, I think it's Tyler Roberts to put the ball out for a throw. He does not. Ball goes forward, pumped into the box, and Klich gets the goal. Cue a brawl of epic proportions as every Aston Villa player is like, what the hell, bro?
Yep.
We thought you were going to put the ball out, yet you ran forward. It was very similar. Do you remember back in, I think it was the 90s, the Overmars goal that Carnu scored. I think that was actually against Sheffield United, who went up at the expense of Leeds United this weekend. That was an FA Cup goal back in the day when Carnu latched onto a throw-in, which was supposed to be thrown back to the goalkeeper after an injury, but Arsenal score from it anyway, and they offered to do a replay of that game and whatnot. But obviously, after this brawl erupted, Ahmed El Ghazi sent off in that brawl for an elbow on Patrick Bamford. He wasn't elbowed.
Nope.
No contact at all. Nothing touched his face. So maybe a bit of a ban coming for Bamford in that one. Who also appeared to clothesline, I think it was Conor Hurricane, who also was involved in some fisticuffs. There might be some retroactive action happening here. But basically, then we had the spectacle of John Terry screaming for Marco Bielsa to do the right thing, which is the irony of all ironies. Yep. John Terry screaming for fair play. Bielsa ordering his side to let Aston Villa score.
Give them the goal. You could hear
Give them the goal, he's shouting. Give them the goal over and over again. Obviously, this having huge consequences for Leeds because Villa walked through the park to score an equaliser. Although, what was it? Pontus Jansson.
Yep.
He actually tried to throw a tackle in to try and stop it. He was not reading the script correctly.
My favorite thing about that really quickly is that when the kind of melee is happening after Leeds have scored, I think it's Jansson who goes over and starts talking to the Villa bench, and it's like, oh, like it's okay, we didn't mean to, like, you don't need to be so mad, like, it's part of the game, whatever. And I feel like Jansson then was like, well, I did apologize, so I feel like that should be enough. I don't know why you all are trying to score right now. So I don't know why he went from being conciliatory and peacemaker to then trying to slide tackle to stop what was supposed to be a, like, intentionally allowed goal.
Yeah, and it just seems like, the consequences of that decision that Bielsa made could be massive because now, they scored at a chance to go up automatically. They're going to probably have to go up if they go up indeed through the playoffs, where they could meet Aston Villa once again in the playoffs. So that should be very interesting. But Tate, obviously the big question is here, should the goal have been allowed? Should Klich have gone through and scored? My opinion is yes, absolutely. Yep. You have to play to the whistle. If there's a head injury, the practice is to stop, but it was a regular injury rolling on the floor, which, by the way, I seem to remember many times John Terry encouraging Chelsea to play on when there's been a player on the floor, play on, him screaming. So him being on the opposite side of that decision in this situation, I think that Bielsa made a mistake here. He shouldn't have allowed Villa to go back and score.
So I think a couple of things here. First off, I understand why Villa were so upset. I believe Villa had played it out of bounds earlier in the game when a Leeds player was down, so I think they had maybe established the precedent. But as you said, it's not an official rule. It's not. It is sportsmanship to play the ball out of bounds. It is not required sportsmanship, and we have seen it plenty of times when teams think a player is faking an injury or time wasting or just kind of deliberately trying to throw off the rhythm of the game. They will continue to play on, even if it really makes the other team very angry. So I think the one thing that really confuses this entire situation is Tyler Roberts, because he's played the ball out wide and he shapes entirely like he's going to pass the ball out of bounds. You know that sort of thing when the player stops and turns and they're like, all right, fine, I'll kick it out of bounds, we'll stop it. He does all of that. All of the Aston Villa players stop, and then he plays the ball down the line for click to get onto. Then he runs inside and scores. But that pass sort of puts every Aston Villa on their heels, every player on their heels. And so, I understand why they're really frustrated because of that moment from Roberts. But I'm with you that, technically, you don't have to stop. The referee, if he thinks it's a bad enough injury, would have blown the whistle, didn't blow the whistle. So I do think it's a little bit Villa sort of being presumptuous in the, okay, you guys are going to stop for sure. And then the reaction to it, again, I understand, but you've got to be a little bit more composed in that moment because it's not going to change anything. It's really hard. It's the same thing as when you think the ref got it wrong. And you want to explain, you want to argue, you want to yell. It's not going to change anything. It's not going to put a red card or a yellow card back in the ref's pocket. In this case, it's not going to take the goal off. And I think, if anything, it maybe makes it more contentious. It's why you see Janssen, I think, try to stop the equalizer when Bielsa is trying to say, no, give them the goal, give them the goal. Because I do think that forgive me for being a little long-winded, but I think Bielsa, he himself, if you watch him gesturing, he kind of puts his hands up like, why are we still playing? And I think he himself didn't necessarily like what Leeds were doing and probably would have done exactly what he did, even if there hadn't been a kind of brawl scrap and there hadn't been a bunch of screaming and yelling. So I think it's Villa maybe overreacting a little bit because I think they felt a little bit, foolish, I guess, in the moment, or a little bit naive. Again, I understand why they did that, why they felt that way. But I think I'm with you that Leeds are still technically within the realm of getting an automatic promotion spot. They were in those spots a couple weeks ago, and now they're really having to battle. So I understand why they would push for it, why they would be a little bit brutal. And it is a little bit like that. Maybe this is completely unfair, but I also think in my mind, again, this might be my Man United bias, but I think of them as nasty Leeds. I think of them as dirty Leeds. I think of them as the Don Revie Leeds, and that extends all the way until now. So it would be kind of fitting for them to get promotion by sort of doing what some might perceive as an underhanded tactic. So for all those reasons, I was sort of surprised when they did end up letting Villa get the equalizing goal, even if it probably was the sportsmanship right thing to do.
Well, it's a fascinating insight into Marcelo Bielsa's moral code, the man who's fully admitted to spying on all his opposition and for, digging out Derby by laying out all their tactics for everybody to see. He won't stand for it if there's a potential infraction of the gentleman's code on the field, though, of course, but spying off of it is absolutely fine. And I think there's not, as you say, there's not a lot of goodwill towards Leeds in general from the rest of the soccer community. So, I think that has helped Bielsa's standing, and that might help it. That'll go down in Bielsa legend, that decision, won't it? But could be something that he comes to regret big time.
It may well could be. We know also he loves to kind of fly off the handle and quit. So if maybe he ends up getting too much pressure, we'll see what happens. But for now, it means Norwich and Sheffield United promotion secured. They'll be back in the Premier League, and it sets up with one game remaining, 2 games for Derby County, I believe. Essentially, Leeds top of the playoff places, 3rd place with 83 points. West Brom 4th, 80. Villa 5th, 76. Derby 6th, 70. Middlesbrough also on 70. And so where this one ends up, I don't really know, but I like the idea of getting a West Midlands derby of West Brom Villa, and then the winner of that playing Leeds. I hope it would be Villa v Leeds again for that final spot, because it will be a feisty affair if that goes down. Yeah,
definitely. And I'd like, when all is said and done, I'd quite like to see Lampsey and Derby go up, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I have no loyalty towards Frank Lampard, so.
You have loyalty to narrative, though, Tay, don't you? And that's narrative. That's good narrative. That's him coming good. That's him potentially setting himself up, bringing a club up like that and getting absolutely pounded in the Premier League next season. Be good grounding for him to eventually be Chelsea manager, won't it?
I mean, I suppose so. When that inevitably happens, would there be any?
Which it will.
Ryan, like you know better than I think, I hope.
Not about a lot of things.
Is there still, well, about most things, I would say. Is there still any like bad blood or sort of historical connection between Leeds and Derby because of the Brian Clough connection?
I don't think so. I mean, they're not geographically a million miles apart either, but I don't think that's the thing. I might be wrong.
All right, so that'll just be the like lazy journalist looking for narrative. If that ends up happening, then it will be the like Brian Clough Derby is how they'll phrase that one if it comes down to Leeds and Derby in the playoff final.
We can still call it that. It's all good.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. So commiserations to everyone involved, and also congratulations to everyone involved, but especially congratulations to Norwich and Sheffield United back in the Premier League for both of them.
Yeah, Chris Wilder saying, referring to Leeds United as Muppets afterwards. We've had one defeat in 13, and I've got Muppets from Leeds talking about the pressure being on us. Joke's on you, Leeds.
Joke's on you, indeed. Joke's on Schalke, I guess. Dortmund? I guess probably Dortmund. Probably Dortmund in this
More
one.
so Dortmund, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd say so. Dortmund, we're going to move to the Bundesliga, losing at home 2-4 to Schalke. Schalke with a 4-2 win. Bayern Munich dropping points with a draw this weekend, but with Dortmund's loss, that puts Bayern top of the table, 2 points ahead of Borussia Dortmund with a few games to play, but it does feel like this was a big slip up for Dortmund, especially given the way it ended up playing out. Ryan, I'm going to say my narrative for this one is that it was a game of frustration for Borussia Dortmund.
I think you might be right there. Leeds, of course, not the only team giving away goals at home to rivals.
There we go.
To damage their chances of climbing the table. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of talk about this being the title race almost over, but you know, there's 2 points in it, and there's 3 games. Oh, what am I saying? It's Bayern Munich. I don't know why I'm going with that point. But
you've already done it with Brighton and Leicester. I thought you were going to do it again.
Borussia Dortmund, they were 9 points clear in December, weren't they? So it's a bit of a turnaround for them. Obviously, Bayern have been tremendous in the second half of the Bundesliga season. But wow, I mean, what was going on here with Borussia Dortmund? I mean, this is a huge result for Schalke, obviously. They're 6 points clear of relegation now. This is their first win in 5 games. A huge result in the backyard of their biggest rival. But Dortmund were absolutely not at the races this one. A few pretty bad defensive mistakes for a start, weren't there, from a couple of sort of set-piece kind of deals? Yeah,
well, that's what I mean when I say I think this is a game of frustration, because they jump out to an early lead. It's a lovely little like pull back and then lifted ball over the top from Jadon Sancho.
Oh, yeah.
Götze heads it home. It's 1-0 to Dortmund. It feels like
everything's
going
right. By the way, Sancho apparently got hit by a lighter during the celebration for that goal, so that's not great.
Did not know that. That changes the narrative a little bit. Maybe that feeds into the like emotions and frustration, because then Schalke sort of like Weston McKennie has a weak shot. I was watching the highlights of this one and thinking, like, why are they featuring the Weston McKennie highlight? Is that just for Americans? Then I realized this was the VAR moment. Embolo flicks the ball up, it hits Julian Weigel's hand. Whether or not you agree, the VAR official looks at it, reverses the decision, gives a penalty, and I think that's kind of the start of things going sideways for Dortmund. Then Salif Sane gets the go-ahead goal off of a corner, outworks 3 different Dortmund players. So then it sort of is like, not only have we now kind of given up a VAR penalty, we've conceded a free kick when we had numbers in the box. And so you start to see it kind of just like slip a little bit. Then you have the Marco Reus clumsy tackle. He gets a red card. Schalke score from a free kick immediately after that one. And I think
lovely free kick
almost breaks the spirit. And that's where, because the one that is the most obvious to me of like, oh, this is Dortmund feeling like they've lost the season, is Marius Wolf's red card. Moments later, I think, is it Royce in like the 62nd and Wolf in like the 67th or something like that?
Yeah. They're very on the same ankle. Together. The same ankle they're tackling.
Oh, was it really? I didn't notice that.
Yeah, same player, same ankle.
Oh, I didn't know. I thought it was 2 different players. I knew it was Serdar for the second. I wasn't sure who it was for the first. But that one...
Same Achilles, I should say.
Oh, it's just... And the fact that I think it's just because Serdar falls down and then kind of does a little bit of a Neymar where he then kind of splashes forward after it and rolls around a bit. You see the Dortmund players get in his face and protest a bit more than I think was deserved, because this one to me was boots to the Achilles because Wolf had no chance of getting that ball. It's an obvious red. Referee's in position to see it. And it just felt very stupid and very emotional of, oh, this game has completely slipped away from us and I'm mad.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in the Pep Guardiola school of breaking down play to foul, that was not the correct way to do it from Royce and Wolf,
so
definitely. And less contact, obviously, with Wolf, but as you say, a deserved red card. Also, Weston McKennie, who got the booking late on, didn't he? I mean, could have had a red for that, I felt, too, as well. I mean, well, I actually had a look on German Twitter, German Twitter was mad with Weston McKennie. Lots of "Das ist rot, das ist nicht gelb, das ist rot," which is basically German for "he should have been sent off."
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah,
and I think that's why he's substituted out later on.
I think they said that he was substituted out because he was in red card danger.
Yeah,
baby.
Yeah. I was also kind of annoyed.
Zone.
The danger zone, indeed. I was also annoyed with Wolf's red card because you can see when they cut back to the Dortmund bench looking very panicked and scared. You can see Christian Pulisic was clearly about to sub in, and now things have to change. So I think he doesn't end up getting on the pitch until about 10 minutes later. So that could have been it. Christian Pulisic could have come on and saved the entire day, and then the whole narrative has changed. But instead, he's not allowed to, and that was clearly the only thing that was holding him back.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no American bias there at all.
Absolutely not. Yeah, they've really spursed this up, haven't they, Borussia Dortmund? I think it's a conclusion, isn't it?
I mean, it is, and that's a good way to put it because it does feel like both in the Bundesliga and the Premier League. Again, I'm a Man United fan, but like it did feel like it was going to be like Liverpool finally find a way that this is their year, they make it happen. Dortmund are going to find a way, they're going to outperform Bayern Munich. And yet, in the end, it does feel like those situations have flipped, and it will end up being Bayern Munich and Man City on top of the table at the end of the year. You sigh like you're not happy about it. Get out of here. Get out of here.
Do we want Bayern Munich to win their 7th consecutive title? Is that what we're after on this show?
That is not what we're after on this show. I meant more so that you're sighing about Man City, not Bayern Munich. But yeah, no, we do not. So let's talk about maybe surprising conclusions to games. Let's talk about Rennes 2, PSG 2, Rennes winning the Coupe de France in penalties. And I don't know how else to phrase this. So Ryan, I want to know your opinion on this. Aside from, was this just PSGing? Because they go up 2-0 and they looked completely dominant. It could have been 4 or 5-0. They were just Rennes were all over the place trying to shut down this attack. Neymar comes back. It's his first start since I think January. He looked excellent. He I think plays the corner for the Dani Alves one-time volley. That was an amazing goal. Then he lobs the goalkeeper on a breakaway. PSG go up 2-0. Again, could have been 4 and 5-0. And then I don't know if it was just the case that they took their foot off the gas or maybe just thought they had it in the bag, or I guess that's the same thing. But either way, they let Rennes back into it, and suddenly it's 2-2. And I think, again, you start to see PSG panic a little bit because of the way the season has gone.
Yeah, a bit of tortoise and the hare analogy going on here, maybe. I mean, that Kimpembe own goal was a lovely striker's finish, I thought, just in the wrong net for the 2-1. And then looking at obviously that's a defensive error. And then the 2-2 goal, the Mexa's header. I freeze-framed it when the header goes in. In the 6-yard box, there's 7 white shirts and 1 red shirt, Mexa, who scores the goal. So I think that says a lot about what's happening at PSG at the moment. That was Neymar's first start since January. I think I saw a stat on Twitter that Neymar hasn't been on the field for any time that PSG have lifted a trophy. Isn't that amazing?
What?
He's never been on the field.
Right,
so this could have been his chance.
You're right. I guess last season he finished up injured, didn't he?
Yeah. Oh, hang on. What was that? Sorry, something just hit my roof. I think it was Nkuku's penalty. Just landed.
I was wondering how you were going to work that in there. I want to talk about that penalty, but I do want to talk about the goal. You mentioned the equalizer for Rennes because I went back and watched this. We were not helped by the replays because they did that really frustrating thing where they decided to show us the corner kick taker taking the kick from like 4 different angles. Exactly. And so you can't really see it, but on the replay, you can see that the first person to make... By the way, how would you pronounce the goal scorer's name? Because you did it perfectly and I cannot.
I feel like it's Mexer. I don't know.
It's something along those lines, but he gets the header. The first person who's supposed to be marking him is Angel Di Maria, who just sort of does a hip check, haha, I've completely thrown you off by putting a hip into you. That did nothing. And again, and so you end up having a bunch of bodies in the box for PSG. They don't do anything. It's 2-2. They go into extra time. And then you have the kind of, because of what happened at the end of this game, because of the penalties, because of the Neymar incident, which we'll get to, I'm sure. One thing that kind of gets overlooked is the fact that Kylian Mbappe also sent off in this game, or not but sent off in this game for a horrific challenge, definitely terrible on De Silva. But I think I know what he was doing, and I think I understand why he was not frustrated by the call, but sort of felt like, no, that's not what I was doing. So would you like to hear my interpretation of what happened?
I'd love to, because I don't know what he was doing.
So it's basically ball going into the corner flag. I think Mbappe going for it, De Silva going for it. Mbappe, when you look at the replay, definitely studs up, comes across, and like goes into like the knee, like lower knee of De Silva. De Silva goes down. It always looks like a stamp. Bernat, for some reason, comes over and yells at De Silva to get up because I think he thought it was a dive. That was a bad decision. And Mbappe gets the straight red, justifiably a straight red. But what I think he's trying to do is I think he is so used to being the fastest player that I think Mbappe sees De Silva coming, steps across, is trying to step across him basically to put Mbappe's body between the ball and the defender, so that then when the defender barges into him, he knocks him over and it's a free kick. But I think because he then steps across a little bit later than he expected, or maybe De Silva's a little bit faster, instead of stepping in front, he steps into his knee and it's a red card.
You see, that was a very long way of saying that he put a really high studs up challenge into the side of someone's knee that could have really hurt them. But that's the kind of the cutting analysis that people are looking for on Total Soccer Show, so I appreciate that. I just thought my favourite part of the entire incident was the look on Mbappe's face when the red card came out. I was like, me? Are you sure?
Do you know who I am? I mean, that felt like a person who got pulled over and they're like, do you know who my dad is? Like, are you kidding me? Get out of here. Yes, so he gets the red, does not take a penalty. Instead, PSG missed theirs. I love the Rennes goalkeeper reacting as though he made a save. That was outstanding.
It was all him.
But it totally was. Then we have the celebrations such as they were at the end. And I'm going to assume that you've seen the video of Neymar's altercation with the fan.
Yeah, he did. He was had a little bit of fisticuffs on his way up to get his a losers medal.
Yeah, and I don't know what to make of this because from what I have read, I don't speak French. The person who he kind of gets into an altercation with was definitely trolling the PSG players. Like, for example, some cutting insults here. He called Gigi Buffon a buffoon. He called him a buffoon, Ryan. I know, it's tough.
Wordplay. I love wordplay.
And he apparently he had it was some sort of Euro League 2 player sort of comment to Neymar. He had a few different ones. He called Verratti a racist for some reason, but he was clearly trying to get under the skin of the PSG players. I don't say that as an excuse. I just say that as still can't quite figure out what happened or why Neymar would choose to go, because he's kind of walked past the guy. He leans in, then he leans in further, and then at the very end he kind of throws, looks like a little slap punch at the end, maybe a little rabbit punch. He also had knocked the guy's cell phone down a little bit because I think that man was recording Neymar. Either way, it's sort of just a complete lack of focus in that moment, or a lack of, I guess, emotion taking control. Maybe it is just that Neymar hasn't been there. He really wanted to finally get to win a trophy with PSG, or lift a trophy with PSG. But either way, I then wonder what's going to happen, because it does feel like it's either going to be one of two things: that Neymar will kind of have the book thrown at him because you can't interact with the fan in that way, or what I feel like is more likely is that it's Neymar, it's PSG, it's going to be a slap on the wrist, if that at all. Hey everybody, Taylor jumping in really quickly. After we finished recording, I saw that French publication Sport English, so the English version of sports, were reporting that the French Football Federation was considering banning Neymar for up to 8 matches for striking the supporter. However, it could be fewer if there was provocation, or if they feel that there was provocation. It also depends on whether or not the match official included it in the kind of match report. So lots of variations there, lots of variables there. My guess is that he ends up getting 3 to 5. That's completely my speculation, but that feels about what will end up happening. It's also worth noting that he is already banned from PSG's first 3 Champions League games of next season for his comments made about the officiating in PSG's eventual loss to Manchester United in the Champions League this season. So could be that he's banned from the first 3 games of the Champions League, as well as the first few games of PSG's domestic campaign as well. So that's going to make it very difficult for them to win Ligue 1 until maybe December or January. They're going to have to wait a few extra months to wrap up the title. Not being able to win it in the fall is really going to be a problem for them. But we shall see what ends up happening. I'm sure we'll talk about it in another weekend review, or later on in the year when we get to talking about PSG's maybe preseason or what to expect from them down the road. But for now, here's more of me and Ryan talking about PSG.
Yeah, it could be maybe somewhere in between those two, but I think I understand that, in civil society that fella shouldn't have been taunting the PSG players like he was, but at the same time, I do feel like Neymar should have risen above that, maybe ignored him.
Yeah, I think so, and I think Neymar in a lot of these moments is, and I like Neymar, I do. I think we got accused a couple different times during the World Cup of being Neymar apologists for whatever reason, or at least I was. I think Daryl likes him less than I do, but in this game, like, you saw the best and worst of him. That, again, his goal was really impressive. His just presence causes panic amongst defenders, but you also saw the worst, that he gets a stamp himself. I forget who the Rennes player was. Maybe could have gotten a red card, certainly could have gotten a yellow card. Instead, the referee gives nothing, and the reason why he gives nothing is because I think it's basically player comes in, tries to make a play on the ball, is slow because Neymar is fast, steps on Neymar's foot. So maybe you could give a yellow for it being reckless or out of control. But instead, Neymar does the thing where he falls down and rolls around 16 times. And if you're the referee, you look at that. I'm sorry, if you're really injured, you don't do that. If you're really hurt, you're trying to remain motionless because you're focused on making the thing that hurts really bad not hurt really bad. You're not theatrically rolling around a whole bunch. And so I think that's why the referee could have given a card and instead doesn't. And those are the moments when I think Neymar really hurts his own case because he ends up just looking like a player who's diving and making more out of a challenge than he needs to.
Do you mean to say that when Neymar does that thing where he barrel rolls 48 times, people aren't buying what he's selling? Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, yes, first of all, I am suggesting that shock of all shocks, but I'm more so wondering, like, he has to know that, right? Like, do you think it's just? Forgive me because I'm now asking you to, like, psychoanalyze a professional player, which is never a fun thing to do, nor even a useful thing. But I just don't get why in that moment, like, he knows how ludicrous he looked in the World Cup when he did it all the way down the sideline, and there were so many memes and gifs and everything made about it. Not that he concerns himself with those things, but I have to believe he's somewhat aware of it. And you would think that he would kind of know that that's not going to be a good look for him, and yet he still does it. It does not make any sense to me.
Knowing that something's not going to be a good look for him, but still doing it is kind of his mantra, isn't it, to be fair?
Oh, my God, I can't believe I set you up for that. I did not mean to do that, but well done.
He also he dug out his teammates. He criticised some of the more inexperienced members of his side. They need to listen more than they talk. Sometimes when a more experienced guy speaks, they answer back. When the coach speaks, they answer back. This is not how the team will go far. Ooh.
I also like the idea of, like, him saying that, like, when the more experienced players, like, they need to listen, and when, like, the coach speaks, they need to listen. And Thomas Tuchel was like, "Yeah, I agree," and Neymar just like, "Yeah, okay, shut up for a second. I'm talking right now.
Shut up,
like,
I'm talking. Men are talking."
There's no way that he has a reverential respect for Thomas Tuchel, I would guess. But either way, congratulations to Rennes. PSG still Ligue 1 champions, but that is probably not what they were expecting maybe a month or two ago. So they don't end up wrapping it up. Barcelona do this weekend. They wrap up yet another La Liga title with a 1-0 win over Levante. I do not have much to say about this aside from never in my life has it felt more like, okay, we know what's going to happen, guys. Just let Leo Messi score some sort of weird goal in the box when it doesn't seem like anyone's going to score. And that's pretty much exactly what happened.
I think my big takeaway from Barcelona in this instance and this season is that they're low-key brilliant. Is that fair? I mean, it seems like they're on the verge of a third treble in a decade, if my math works out correctly. And we're kind of not even that hyped about them. It's just like, that's what Barcelona do. They've just normalized being incredible.
Maybe that's the argument for the European Super League. Is just they need an even more prestigious competition to win.
Yeah. Well, there's a Champions League.
Well, there is that. I guess that's a good point. Yeah, if they haven't won since Pep Guardiola, right? So maybe that is it. Maybe just win the Champions League
2015
3 times in a row. Oh yeah, see, they're fine. They've won a plenty. See, this is why. It all feels business as usual for Barcelona. But I think I enjoyed this one because it was, in the end, the goal comes from, like, the two things that I kind of enjoy about this iteration of Barcelona. It's a ball that looks like it's going to be popping loose and cleared by Levante. Instead, Arturo Vidal just comes flying in, wins a header at, like, completely disregarding his own safety and the fact that he may end up getting kicked or headed in the face, wins that header, it falls to Lionel Messi, and then you have, like, Leo Messi just sort of, when everybody else around him, it's like the Quicksilver scene from the X-Men movies where everyone around him seems to just, like, slow down just a little bit, and he's able to just calmly find the corner and pass it in.
Yeah. And obviously he came on in the second half of this one, nice and rested for his demolishing of Liverpool later in the week, which you can see on BR Live, I understand.
Well done, sir. But congratulations to Barcelona, congratulations to Rennes, commiserations to Dortmund, and congratulations to everybody, including Wimbledon, who had good weekends. Woo! Apologies to everybody who did not. Again, apologies to our friends in MLS. We didn't talk about it too much, or we didn't talk about it very much at all, except I did want to ask you, would you like to talk about the battle of Ibrahimovic yet again?
I would do. He who shouts in opponents' faces, should we call him from now on?
All right. So this was Zlatan Ibrahimovic versus Neda Manua. Is that how we're going to build this one?
Yeah, I guess it is.
Yes. And I'm sort of confused as to what to make of this one because it feels like Zlatan is going to spin this one. It's basically Galaxy end up winning 2-1 at home over RSL, I believe it was. And it's sort of Zlatan, like, he's billing this as him being the hero of he finds a way to win. He was frustrated all game, but at the end, he comes through in the clutch goal, which maybe could be the narrative, except that he gets a yellow card for, like definitely slap-pulling Onua. Then he kind of jaws at him the entire game. And then when he scores the goal, gets in Onua's face. Afterwards, goes into the locker room, quote-unquote, to apologize. Onua doesn't accept it. Things kind of get heated there again. And it's just sort of Zlatan, I guess, doing Zlatan things, but this is where you have Zlatan doing Zlatan things in the worst kind of way.
Yeah, the quote from Onua is, he came here to apologise after the game because from 60 minutes in, he's saying to me he's going to do me. He's going to hurt me for that game. And this is the guy who's the face of MLS, as he calls himself. Does he? But this is the way he plays on the field. So I don't care. You don't say that on the field. I'm not going to accept his apology. It's unacceptable. Ooh. I mean, there's a lot of this kind of stuff, isn't there? Are we just drawing attention to this because it's Zlatan and because the player has complained? Because I'm sure this happens a lot after goals and, goalkeepers saving penalties and shouting at the penalty taker and that kind of thing. And obviously, Onwa is upset by it. But, I mean, didn't this guy play on the same team as Joey Barton? He must know that that kind of shenanigans can happen.
Yeah, yes, he did. And you're right. I think it's just that with, because I emphasized earlier that Zlatan gets the yellow card, it felt sort of one-sided to me that he's a defender, he's going to body up against the forward whenever the situation requires for it, especially if they're trying to be physical to frustrate Zlatan and kind of limit his effectiveness on the ball. So then when it's Zlatan commits the foul, gets the yellow, jaws a lot of the half, talks about how he's going to hurt him, talks about how he's going to break him, gets the goal, gets in Anua's face, and then Onua does not react at all. Again, It just sort of felt like, Is this going toe-to-toe and man-to-man, or is this a little bit just picking on a guy who seems sort of down in that moment? And you could see at the very end of the game when the final whistle goes, Onua walks in the exact opposite direction of Zlatan. Zlatan definitely starts walking towards him in that kind of strut way that he tends to do. And, it felt to me in that moment this isn't a sort of man-to-man battle where they bumping chests. It felt a little bit more I don't want to deal with this anymore. I'm going to the locker room. And then Zlatan came into the locker room to say hello one more time.
He's the worst kind of aggressor. Just won't leave him alone.
Exactly. So that's I guess our one MLS highlight from the week. But as I said, more MLS to come later on. Champions League in between. Daryl's gonna be back in studio to help me break down the Champions League games. I think we'll probably do one show on Tuesday, one show on Wednesday. I say that to the listeners more so than to you, Ryan Bailey. To you, Ryan Bailey, I would say thank you very much for doing this weekend review. Initially not scheduled, then your schedule cleared up, and the first thing you did was message me to say, let's make it happen.
Need to get off the bench. I'm like Leo Messi. I've got to come on and score that. Well, that's making me sound far too important. Enjoy the Avengers is what I'll leave you on, Tate. And do you share a popcorn or do you get one each?
See, I'm genuinely concerned about the snack situation this time. I was not aware of how long it was plus trailers. And I don't necessarily trust my bladder. So I'm not sure what we're going to do here, Ryan. I think in the past we have shared a popcorn and both gotten large drinks. I might kind of pass on the large soda this time. I saw Aaron West talking about how he had to budget his icy the entire time and really kind of only eat in select moments so that he didn't end up having to take a break in the middle.
I think there's somewhere online that tells you the minute you can leave where there's a less important scene if you do need the bathroom. But, you got to soak up all that Endgame goodness, haven't you?
I suppose so. I do miss when we were living in Turkey and then and in Kurdistan in Iraq. Movie theaters in Turkey and Iraq have intermissions. They have breaks. Now that is because a huge percentage of the country smokes, and they know that people aren't going to go more than 45 minutes without smoking. So,
is that right?
Yes. In Kurdistan especially, they give a couple of different breaks for throughout the movies, which is
why don't they just
hilarious.
Let them smoke in the theater like it's Mad Men or something?
I mean, I think because they're trying to have some level of of decorum, but yeah, I think people still do smoke in the theaters. And there was one, it was in Kurdistan. This is how long ago we were there, and how limited our options were. We saw, is it Iron Man 3 that has the Mandarin? Does that stand out?
I think so.
So okay, did you ever see that movie? We're going on a tangent here. Do you remember how they have the random breaks where suddenly you get the Mandarin's terrorist video?
I don't recall.
Okay. So it's like the buildings blowing up and people being shot and all this stuff. And that was where they cut at the intermission. So it came back and that was the first thing you saw. And it was a slightly jarring moment. So I guess maybe in that way, I'm okay if they don't have intermissions as long as they're not terrifying me.
It's going to make your 3-hour movie 5 hours long if they do.
Yes, we were genuinely concerned about if we see a morning movie, will it be done in time for Champions League tomorrow? And I guess we'll find out. Can you
imagine when this thing goes on TBS, when they put the advert breaks in? It's going to take days.
Oh, they're going to love it. They're going to love it because it just clears out 6 hours of time for them, I'm sure. But until that happens, Ryan Bailey, we have not gone 6 hours, thankfully. We've done our usual about an hour, but I would like to say thank you once again for taking the time and for talking through my Avengers anxiety with me.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.